Hello, my name is Michael Papagiorgio. I'm the Manager of Planning Environment here at Frankston City Council, and my work environment is the lovely city of Frankston and everything in it. I grew up in country Victoria, but when I did visit my relatives in Oakley in Melbourne, I do recall coming down to Frankston for a picnic by the beach. We drove down, we found a shady spot, and we really enjoyed the day here. And so I have fond memories of Frankston as a holiday destination, which many people of my age would have. I've been at Frankston for 4 years now, so it's not a long time, but I've certainly discovered that Frankston has lots of different areas with their own special character, and some of that actually comes out in our work here in the planning department at Frankston, where we're looking at new development, but we always have to be conscious of the history of the city and how we got here. When people think about heritage, they often ask whether a building or a place has been heritage listed. And usually what they're referring to are state level objects of heritage value, and there's something called a state heritage register. But people should also be aware that we can have local heritage items, locations and sites, and these are found in the heritage overlay and the schedule to the heritage overlay in the Frankston planning scheme. So it's a good place to start your research if you're interested in local history. So you can list in the schedule to the heritage overlay buildings, which you might expect, heritage buildings, homesteads, important public and civic buildings, but you can also list structures. So for example, we have got the gateposts to Frankston Park listed in our schedule to the heritage overlay because they're considered to be important memorials from Frankston's history. And it can also be the actual land itself, so a garden or the site where something happened can also be included in the list. And why are they listed? It's so that when someone is proposing a change to that building or that site, the actual values of the heritage place can be considered in deciding whether any demolition or any new construction can occur. So it doesn't mean that you can't do any extensions or changes to a listed building, but those changes have to be designed and constructed in a way that won't detract from the heritage values. Okay, well, people might be surprised to learn that we have over 71 listed places in the schedule to our heritage overlay in the Frankston planning scheme. You can jump online, look up Frankston planning scheme online. You can go to clause 4301, which is our heritage overlay, and you can actually read down the list of those 70 plus locations that are considered to have some heritage value or interest in terms of Frankston's history. What sort of places are on that list? It'd be no surprise for most people that grand houses such as Cruton Farm, Mulberry Hill and Ballon Park Homestead are important items on that list. But there's lots and lots of ordinary houses, or what people might think are ordinary houses. So we've actually got places, a lot of modernist 1950s houses in Gulls Way and in Yamala Drive that were designed by important architects of the time and still are considered to be pioneers in terms of modern architecture in the Melbourne context. So they're almost like the hidden gems that complement the more civic buildings such as churches and council facilities that are listed, but are also considered to be important heritage items. Okay, the register in the planning scheme can be amended, and we do from time to time add more items to the register because things are getting older all the time and turn into heritage items. So as we found with modernist buildings of the 19th and 20th centuries. So how do you get something listed? When council is preparing an amendment to the scheme, it is able to consider new inclusions in any part of the scheme, and that might include places to be added to the heritage overlay. When we do a study, such as we did a few years ago, looking at house design within Frankston and looking at the remaining examples from prominent architects and styles of the previous century, we actually called for people to nominate buildings and sites that should be included in that study. And as a result of that study, some 17 new items were listed in the Heritage Overlay Schedule. Okay, I think the variety of items that are included in Frankston's heritage are very, very rewarding. So we do have the grand mansions like Cruden Farm, and its garden setting is very, very important. But we also have hidden history, such as Langwarrin Nature Reserve, which has got relics from the World War II and World War I in terms of it being used as a camp and training area, and also as a hospital, I think, for during the war period. So there's hidden elements of history that can be discovered in all of Frankston suburbs, and they can be reflected and found from our Heritage Register. In terms of getting something listed in Frankston Planning Scheme, Council amends its planning scheme from time to time and is able then to add properties to the schedule, to the Heritage Overlay. When we've done a major study or investigation, such as our mid-century housing survey that was done a few years ago, we are able to investigate potential heritage properties that should be included on the list, and at the same time invite members of the public to nominate properties that could be included. Once they've been investigated and are considered to have value, then we create an amendment to the planning scheme and go through the formal process. Of course, that involves informing the owners and seeking submissions as to whether or not those properties should be included on the list. And if it's successful and the amendment is adopted, we then add those properties to our schedule. As a result of that 20th century modern housing study, we added some 17 properties onto the Frankston Planning Scheme Heritage Overlay Schedule.
My name is Sari Miles. I work at the Frankston Library, and my job title is Collections Librarian. I've been doing my job now for about 15 years, and what I do is I look at what the collection needs, and I buy books in and DVDs and whatever else that we have, newspapers, magazines, etc. For the library. And then of course, because we only have so much shelf space, we go book in and a book out. So we have to look at what becomes obsolete and then remove it from the collection. In the archives at the Frankston Library, we have magazines, we have newspapers, we have maps, books, photographs, memorabilia, all sorts of different things, because it's all about keeping track of history and what's gone on in the area. And so we like to keep it if we possibly can. In the libraries, on the library floor in Frankston, we have a local history room. We have posters, like you can see behind me. We have display cabinets that all have photos and books and things in there. And we also have on the website, at the end of March, you'll be able to get onto our website and look up digital replications of photos from the area and search through those, and you're actually able to look at photos on the website. I find that the really interesting things are the local people's histories. We've got quite a few sort of memoirs, and they are fascinating. Things that you find that people do are just not, in some instances, not at all unlike what we do today, and in other instances, it's a much slower form of life, and you just think, oh, so nice. So there's that, we have that. There's also something that we were really thrilled to get, which was a personal photographs taken on the set of the 1959 on the beach with Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner and Fred Astaire, and they've just got set photos, and so they donated this album, and it's just amazing. You know, all these casual shots that just don't exist anywhere, but we've got them. These things are quite precious, so we do have them as a use in the library only. A lot of the photos, as long as we've been able to get them released, legally, people can have. I think they can get copies of them. But yeah, they're definitely able to have a look at them in the library. We have a lot of, in the 80s, the staff did a lot of interviewing of locals, and we have oral histories. And they're fascinating because that's, day-to-day lives. And they're in two formats. People can listen to them, and they've actually been transcribed into a book. So quite often, that sort of thing, people won't realise about that. So I find those really interesting to have a look at as well. One of the things that I find pretty interesting is that the history of the newspapers, because our newspaper collection does go back into the 1800s, just the advertising. So in the 20s there were home remedies in abundance, like the suggestions of things that you'd have. So, if you were feeling that you wanted to lose weight, then swallow a tapeworm, which isn't actually advised nowadays. There's also things like, it didn't matter what the article was in the 80s or 70s, there was a scantily clad woman somewhere beside it. So it's so different now. So they're some of the things that are really interesting, but probably, the On the Beach album is the thing that we sort of looked at when somebody was donating and went, oh yes please, we'll have that. Okay, to access the archives, a patron would come to the library, and they would then, or email, they can email if they wish, and they would speak with one of the staff. The staff would then put their request onto Sally, and then Sally would then be able to contact them directly or email them back, and just confirm exactly what they want, when they want it by, how they could come in and have a look at it, or if it was something that we could give them copies of, or how they could access it. So that would be the easiest way of getting an access to the archives. We would accept it gratefully if they could bring in anything that they had and thought that they would like to donate to the library. They can just drop it off at the desk, or if they wanted to contact the library through phone or email, saying that they make an appointment with Sally, or anything like that. We do get an awful lot of things like newspapers and things, which is terrific, just donated, and we love it. But anything that we can get is really helpful, and it just keeps the archives fresh and complete, or as complete as we can get, and we're able to make sure that it's available for anybody who wants to use it. I lived in Cranbourne when it was a little tiny country town, and you either had to go to Dandenong to go shopping, or you had to go to Frankston, and generally we would come to Frankston to do the shopping, and that was when the library was in the central car park and it was not undercover, and there were shops around the outside. So yeah, I've been familiar with Frankston for practically all my life. This is going to sound so daggy, but going to the Frankston Library when it was in the central car park, and just rummaging through I think it was the junior fiction, and just being amazed that there was an entire series, and I think it might have been an Enid Blyton series, and they had everything, and I thought this was Christmas.
My name's Carol Pico. I work at Impact Volunteering, and I have established the Frankston History Facebook page. The page has existed for 3 years, and we have 2,600 odd members. It started off as a purely personal interest. Cut a long story short, I was part of another Frankston history. It wasn't a history group. They were just, you're from Frankston. We posted a couple of pictures, and they would get removed. And I thought, well, why isn't there, And I knew there was a Lost Melbourne, Lost Dandenong, and I looked for a Frankston one. There wasn't one, and I thought, well, no other way for me to continue to learn about the history, and social media, especially Facebook, it seemed like the perfect marriage. It's not everybody has access to searching for, information. And then it went on to the community, because I thought, there's probably people with things that they've collected over the years because it's part of their history, and I approve posts. They can share anything they have really. Personal sort of family photos and memories, and I guess people then go on to sort of share their memories, and a lot of people have reconnected. They haven't spoken, they reconnect at times. I've had a family, sort of the grandchild learning through the mother, who's also on the page, about their grandfather's business. Sort of, it's pretty amazing. So it's sort of, allowing younger generations to connect. The standout at the moment, Alfonso's book. Well, he's taken before and then and now photos and put them together. It's so varied. It's got so many notable people, and more so, it's I love hearing the everyday persons. You've got your formal history and all, but I think it's the everyday person, and just the so many entrepreneurs and big thinkers, and they had vision, and they obviously loved the place and connected, and and I think that reflects too now when you sort of read about all these people, and Frankston House holds fascination, and Mark Brodie. I would love to sort of find out everything and anything about Mark Brodie, because of his postcards. I think that's what started the sort of, who was this man? And he was involved in so many things. So I'd love to know more about Mark Brodie. Well, an entrepreneur, really. He went into real estate, in photography, notably his postcards. And for me, postcards are so indicative of a time gone, and you can see so much. And but it's not much known about him. No. Very prominent, but he did a lot. If somebody wanted to join our group, they would just send us a request and we would approve it. If somebody had material they wanted to share with us, they would obviously photograph it or present it in whichever way, send it to us, it gets approved and it goes up on the page. Every now and then we get, thank you so much, you've allowed me to go back, to step back in time. For my time, I've moved away now, and it's sort of, so I think I said earlier that history is usually written or remembered by your notable people, and I think the Frankston history page allows the everyday person to be part of that history, because at the end of the day it's all connected. It's not just all the people that are doing great things. We're all doing great things, and I think the page allows people to be part of that, especially if they're not in the history book. The eventual dream, I think, now is sort of having established the social media thing, is getting people to go through their photo albums and get those photos scanned, get them saved, so that they're out there for all of us to enjoy, instead of sitting in a private photo album and maybe being disposed of, because it may not be important to the next generation, but there's a group of people, 2,000 of us, that would love to see this stuff. Interested in history in general, and I'd like to know where I am. So obviously living in the area, I want to find out more. It may be insignificant to someone. It could just be one photo in an album that's insignificant to somebody, but to us, to all our members, it's a little time capsule. We'd love to see it.